You're watching The World with me, Charles Aniagolu. More now on President Macron's announcement that France would, in September, recognize a Palestinian state. Israel and the United States have condemned the move. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said what he called this reckless decision only helped Hamas and set back peace. There was, though, a very different reaction in the Arab world, with Saudi Arabia hailing France's decision as historic, and both the Palestinian Authority and Hamas welcoming it. The US and Israel have taken a decision to withdraw from the current ceasefire talks.
A statement from Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, quote, "We have decided to bring our team home from Doha for consultations after the latest response from Hamas, which clearly shows a lack of desire to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. While the mediators have made a great effort, Hamas does not appear to be coordinated or acting in good faith. We will now consider alternative options to bring the hostages home and try to create a more stable environment for the people of Gaza. It is a shame that Hamas has acted in this selfish way. We are resolute in seeking an end to this conflict and a permanent peace in Gaza." This is not a question of what the United States is doing, it's a question of what Hamas has done. This is a response to what Hamas has done continually.
That's not the position of many of the Israeli hostage families.
Israel has long accepted the deal on the table, and Hamas has long rejected it. I mean, it's never about been our commitment to a ceasefire. That's never been the question here. We have engaged in good faith to try to achieve a ceasefire. The question has always been with Hamas. That is where the question has been. That is where it remains. And the response we just saw from Special Envoy Witkoff is reflective of that.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from London by the international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Good to see you, Dr. Laskiewicz. Let's start with the US and Israel taking a decision to withdraw from the current ceasefire talks. What's your assessment of that?
Well, there are two possibilities. One is that they're planning to act in a more unpleasant manner. After all, many voices have stated from Israel and from America about moving the Gazans to a concentration zone. And therefore, the fact they're withdrawn, at least for the time being, from the peace talks would indicate that they're thinking of this plan, especially as the Americans have said they're now thinking of another approach. The other possibility is that quite genuinely they are not getting anywhere with Hamas. This is, however, a weaker possibility because all negotiations are difficult. Secondly, what does it mean not getting on with Hamas? At the end of the day, the impression there is that the Israeli and Americans are giving a diktat, and if Hamas doesn't like it, it's too bad. Negotiations take time. I think they've made a mistake in withdrawing, and as a result, it may well be another bad time for the Gazan people.
And the timing of this French announcement that it will recognize a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly in September, what do you make of it and of the importance of it? That makes it the first G7 country to do so. I mean, is that going to change anything?
First of all, it is important because France is more important even than G7. If you look at G7, there's only three nations, which are America, France, and Great Britain, which, if you like, are the dominant voices. Sure, Russia and China would like a multipolar world, but either Japan and China are examples, have very little to say diplomatically, or when they do act, in the case of Russia, the world, or many of the people in the world, condemn their actions as a result of the invasion. So therefore, we're down to France, Great Britain, and America. France is one of the big three in this respect, diplomatically. And the fact that they have acknowledged the Palestinian state is very, very important. For example, during the Cold War, there was an alternative Polish government here in London, but it was acknowledged only by Spain, not France, not Great Britain, not America, and as a result, it never really got anywhere. And this is why going in the other direction is a moment of extreme importance diplomatically for the Gazan people.
And President Macron has said he hopes other European countries will follow his lead. He's speaking to Keir Starmer and the German Chancellor today. Do you see the UK and Germany following France's lead?
Yeah, this is more dubious. For a start, other European nations already prior to France acknowledged the Palestine island, but they're not as important as France. Other nations may well do so, but in the case of Great Britain and Germany, here we have a problem. First and foremost, Germany, the Holocaust lives on. Please remember that the Germans mass murdered 6 million Jews, and therefore, if Germany was to now come in on the Palestinian side, that would be a dubious asset to the Palestinians in their striving for statehood. On the other hand, Great Britain is not in such a position. But where it is it actually sees its role, and it fairly successfully actually carries this out, of being the middle voice between Atlantic on one side and Europe on the other. So Keir Starmer is caught between his desire to have some sort of influence in Washington and his desire to step with Western Europe. And as far as one can tell, because he has, after all, banned 2 right-wing Israeli politicians from speaking in Britain, so as far as one can tell, he certainly is open to the notion of a Palestinian statehood, but I doubt he will do anything because of his need and his policy of also staying close to Washington. So in this respect, Macron will stay with maybe other nations, but not those 2.
And of course, for its part, I mean, Israel has absolutely doubled down on its decision never to have a Palestinian state, hasn't it? With Mr. Netanyahu and his ultra-nationalist hard right saying that a Palestinian state would be a launch pad to eliminate Israel.
Yeah, one of the problems here is that we must look at history, not in just the last few days, the last few years, but over decades. It is perfectly true Hamas is a terrorist organization. And however, Israel had already, when it was founded to a degree by terrorists likewise. There is scarcely an African nation, for example, which hasn't had people jailed for what was called terrorism. The problem with the word is, it depends whether, as many people see them as freedom fighters, others people see them as terrorists. Here we have a problem of whose viewpoint you are going for. There is no question that if the Palestinian state is ever to exist, it must recognize Israel. But then it did. Yasser Arafat said he admitted the existence of Israel. So therefore, in this point of view, there is no inherent necessity that a Palestinian state wants to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And there is a third aspect to all this. It's the role of Mossad and the idea, which is stated quite openly, that Hamas actually was supported into power by Mossad in order to weaken the PLA, and as a result finds itself with a worse enemy than the PLA. In this sense, Israel is now caught by a victim of its own success, in inverted commas. Therefore, in my opinion, as far as I can tell, were there to be a Palestinian state set up, it does not automatically imply, and by negotiation this point could be removed about their wanting to have Israel removed. However, Israel has made no attempt, please note, for 20 years. Ever since Netanyahu has been in power, he's made it quite clear there'll be no Palestinian state on his watch. And therefore, the attacks, however gruesome they were a few years back by Hamas on Israel, were also, it might have been helpful had they been a separate state, a recognized state, a state which recognizes Israel, then quite possibly these attacks might never have taken place. Please remember, before any war, before any attack, you must look at the antecedents. And here, the antecedents are not good because Israel made no attempt when it could have negotiated a peace to make the slightest move for Palestinian statehood.
And just briefly, in terms of the humanitarian situation in Gaza, I mean, you've been seeing all the news coming out of there. How do you assess the stage things are at now in Gaza, specifically in terms of food shortages?
There is indeed a food shortage. That appears to be quite clear. It is not a fatal food shortage in the fact that people are, of course, surviving, though there are cases of malnutrition to the point of death. What is also quite clear, though, is that the IDF controls Gaza, and therefore it is ultimately, and Israel is ultimately responsible for the feeding of these people. If there are trucks waiting at the border, then it's up to Israel to see that they get to the point where they can feed the people. What is happening is, as far as I can tell, what the Americans are doing and saying on their side, Israel, is that they're blaming Hamas, when in fact Hamas is not, strictly speaking, in charge. Were the IDF not in Gaza, then indeed Hamas could be blamed. But as it is, they occupy Gaza, and therefore it is Israel's responsibility, as many nation states have pointed out to them, hence the protest a few days back. So it's up to Israel to resolve this situation as soon as possible.
Marek, I want to thank you as always. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the International Affairs Analyst. He was talking to me on the line from London.